Christina Schwid, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. As you
Thanks for
said,
having me, Drew.
as you said, we met at Cosmic Reset, that fascinating conference with pyramids and meditation that I fell asleep at a lot. But all right, we don't need to get into that. Some of my past radio listeners have already heard about that, and I apologize enough for that. So
Mhm.
it was a great conference. I would certainly go back there again, and I hopefully the healings that Daniel Teague, who just messaged me. If I heard a ding ding sound in the background, that was actually probably him on Facebook just now sending me a message. But he knows I'm doing a show right now, so I'm not going to be able to talk to him. So he did some healings and clearings on me. Maybe next time I go to a conference like that, I won't be zonking out like I did. But I'm glad I was able to get you on as a guest. You have the website lightbodytherapeutics.com. I'd
And,
like to give
and
you.
and lightbodyinc.com. That's where the information is.
Let me get that up
Like,
as well. So Lightbody INC
see,
dot com.
yes. And this is because I'm just transitioning. So I have a scheduling site where people schedule their own appointments with me, and then I have a site where there's information where you can actually where you know what you're making appointment for. You know what I mean? Like describing what I do and what kind of offerings I have.
Okay, great to have you on. So I guess
Thanks.
now is a give you the chance to introduce yourself, what you do, what you experienced. You've got the floor, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you for inviting me onto your show, um, and for giving me the opportunity to talk about multidimensionals, because I feel like we're a bit underrepresented in the disclosure movement and the awakening movement. So what I have something called a multidimensional perception. There's other humans have this as well. What makes us different than the old paradigm patterning of a multidimensional is that we don't arrive at this level of perception via spiritual awakening or spiritual training or mystery school. Or there's a lot of systems on this planet in place to wake up a human. We kind of like wake up on our own. We don't really wake up through those kinds of systems. So we have skills that are oftentimes associated with really high-ranking spiritual masters, like maybe a Dalai, like a Lama or a guru, or stuff like this. We're not any of that. We're not at all a guru or on that level as far as the spiritual teaching, but we have the awarenesses. It's like we can see through realms, we can see into bodies, we can communicate with exospecies almost on an unlimited capacity. So we're human, we walk around in bodies, right, and we live our lives, but we just arrived here in a very unique way. And there's more and more, and the reason why it's relevant now is because there's more and more and more of us just one day waking up. And I work specifically with people who feel like they're multidimensional on their awakening journey. And the most common story that I hear is that their life was coming to a culmination, and then something happened. Either they just like had a break and went to bed and woke up, and their life was totally different, or some other kind of event happened, and then every moment after that moment, everything was different for them. So I help support people in their process of that. Because it's not every day you wake up and realize, oh my gosh, the entire world is a lie. How do you navigate with that, right? So I hope that was a good, clear explanation about a multidimensional.
Yes, indeed. There's a lot of lies that we are fed, and how fitting on the it's the 18th anniversary of 9/11. It is today, and well, I've been can't help but point out that Adronis, Brad Johnson, who channels Adronis, did say, and I say this over and over again on my show throughout the course of this year, that 2019 was going to be the year that that 9/11 was going to be acknowledged by the mainstream as being an inside job, and the truthers will be validated.
Hmm.
And interesting how David Icke is currently doing a live presentation on YouTube. I got a quick glimpse of it a couple hours ago of his new book, The Trigger. It's about 9/11. I'm wondering how interesting that he would feel the need to write this. He already wrote Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center disaster, how the official story 9/11 is a monumental fraud back in 2002. I mean,
Hmm.
what else could he need to write in this new book of his that he felt is so worthy and important to get out. I can't help but wonder. But
If I may interject real quick,
yeah,
I think it's because the collective conscious is in a much different place than it was back then, and there's other things that can be revealed, you know what I mean, on a deeper level. So for me, it makes complete sense to why one would want to revisit it.
yeah, it does. And regarding like getting the information out by the mainstream, I mean, I've also been pointing out that Edward Snowden has, well, this is something that Ted Marr said. Saw a couple of people at his conference were presenting back in June of 2016 about how Edward Snowden and his whistleblower colleagues have information that would expose how 9/11 truthers were right all along and would validate the truth movement officially. And when that hasn't been released, and when I ran into Ted Marr at the 2018 January Conscious Life Expo in LA, he was presenting there. I asked him what the holdup was with that, and he reluctantly, and he didn't really want to say because he tries to spread love, but the audience and I forced him to do it. He said that the powers that be said that they would murder a lot of innocent people if Snowden were to release those documents. And part of me kind of thinks that that is not a valid justification to not release the documents, and I can give a very good reason why. Well, two reasons. First of all, if the wars in Afghanistan and the Middle East continue, the people that are going to the amount of people that are going to die is far going to exceed if the wars go into infinity, as they're intended to by the powers that be. The people going to die with that is definitely going to be greater than the amount of people that could be killed as a result of Snowden releasing such documents.
Hmm.
And not only that, I mean, if people do die, one could make the argument we're all infinite consciousness. So what? Those people died as martyrs because they were sacrificed as part of something to wake up humanity, and they all went to paradise. So Edward Snowden shouldn't feel guilty if they get murdered. Some people will say I'm a sicko for saying that, but people that are highly spiritual would say that's actually a great way of looking at it. So, hey, what's your take on my little radical statement there?
Well, dear, on one level, yes, it's important to do what your purpose is and follow through with that, regardless of the consequence, because that is your true purpose. You know what I mean on multidimensional levels. But I hear what you're saying, and I know why people would be offended by it, just because, and really, I think it's just because it's the tone, and you kind of like have like this shock jock kind of quality to the tone. But I agree. It's like we are all in this wild ride together, and we all agree to have our purpose and our roles. And some roles bring more experiences of suffering than others. So it's not that we're separate from that because we're all connected. And this is really, for me, it's a unified yes to freedom and liberation. And I know many humans that would gladly give up their biosuit if that meant the Pachamama, Mother Earth, would be liberated. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I would. And well, when it comes to the looking at your intro here on your Facebook page, I am a white rabbit here to guide others down the rabbit hole of multidimensional reality. Well, I'm sure you and I have a very difficult time understanding the nature of reality because it always gets more and more complicated the more you try to get into it. In fact,
Mhm.
I've even heard one way of looking at it is you really don't want to obsess about quantum physics too much because quantum physics is the nature of how the third dimension works. And if you are obsessing about that and trying to learn too much about that, you're gonna inadvertently get yourself stuck in 3D, even though the information that you gather may seem fun and quirky, no pun intended. But when it comes to understanding multidimensional levels, um, I can't help but ask you, what have you seen that leads you to believe that there is a multidimensional reality? And if I can ask you to maybe give a good definition for dimension, and also this always makes a great radio conversation, never gets old. The difference between dimension and density. Nobody understands the difference between dimension and density, because for every person that says there is no difference, there's always a person that says there isn't a difference, and there is a difference, and people say the difference is blah blah blah. Some people say the difference is no, yada 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 is what the difference is. So nobody really understands if there is or isn't, and if there is, what the true difference between dimension and density actually is. So you focus on multidimensional reality. I hear you laughing. I'm glad you're
I
getting a
am.
joke out of this. So
I'll
could you
explain.
perhaps make sense out of all this?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, when I hear you saying it's like this is the intellectual gymnastics, learning or trying to understand things with the mind, and that's the big thing about what I teach is how to exist without the mind needing to understand and getting, because the mind gets in the way. When we look at the brain waves, there's a study done by Harvard about people who meditate. They have a broader spectrum of brain waves that become dominant in their brain and how their state of being is. And each wave form is representative of a state of being. So like a beta waveform in a brain is linear thinking, you're manifesting this, you're doing that, my name is this, and I'm going down the street and catching the bus, that you're linear in that linear frame up. And that's a very limited way of connecting to reality. There's other frequencies that allow more opening, and that's like the theta and the delta, which happens more when you're in dream time and deep meditation. And these allow you to become more connected into abstract things that are outside of time, things that defy the reality that the beta wavelengths live in. Okay. And when you start tapping into realities with that kind of perception as in your being, it's like everything becomes so simple. As a matter of fact, everything becomes so simple. It's like, wow, it was so simple. It was deceptive, because how could it possibly be that simple? But the reality is that it is, if we can match that frequency in our perception. In this case, I'm using brainwaves as the language to explain that. So when you are, as a human, stepping outside of time, which is what a lot of the masters of Dreamtime have reached out to teach humanity about, you're no longer confined by definition and meaning. It's more about a state of being. You're in a state of being all the time. So I know multidimensionality because it's part of my state of being. And in those states of beings, I create things in this reality from that state. Like when I work with people one-on-one, it's, it could be a healing. It could be a reconstruction or reintegration of their levels of their consciousness. It could be, it depends on what needs to happen. Like I said, I work specifically with multidimensionals, which means they're already in acknowledgement of their psychic intuitive abilities, and I work with them on that level. So when I'm creating things from that level of being, it's just a matter of having my awareness upon it and it manifests. I mean, I've mindfully jumped timelines. I communicate with interdimensional beings every day. They all have, because of how fluid my brainwaves are and how I can just tune into things instantly. So for when all my lenses are open, when my dimensional lenses are open that are hardwired into the body, it's a fluid thing. When you're in the mental frame, that's, you're only seeing through half of your lenses. There's only like half of the lenses of the body that the mind can touch. The other half are completely beyond the mind and are extremely difficult to explain because they're not linear. Like, have you ever tried to explain a dream? Right? That's a reality that you live in, but your consciousness only touches it a little bit in between that waking and dreaming state, dreaming to waking state, right? So it takes a lot of practice for a human to step out of that linear, and you're rediscovering a whole nother way of being. Let me see if I feel like I kind of started to lose that one point that I was on. Does this make sense what I'm saying so far?
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so you asked for an example of the dimensions. So I have a model that I can bring forward that's rather simple. It'll take me a few minutes to explain, but I will do my best to be succinct. So there is a Cherokee record keeper who's also an astrologer and publisher and all these other things in her life, and her name is Barbara Hand Clow. And what she did was bring forward a cosmology understanding from the Pleiadian consciousness, which, according to indigenous lore and many other ancient cultures, we have a very close relationship to the Pleiadians, and that's also in my experience as well. And so they brought this model forward to help wake up humanity, and it's like this: there's 9 dimensions altogether that are hardwired into the human body, which means every human has the ability to access those lenses. You don't have to be particularly upgraded or hybrid or anything like that to access these lenses. Any Joe Schmo on the street can do this, right? And then there's teachings that kind of go beyond that are separate from what she did, that were built upon by the Sasquatch and other interdimensional beings that I've worked with. So once you have those 9 basement ones opened up and flowing, then you can access other points, other kinds of realities. So the basement one that's in the perineum is being fully connected to the natural rhythms of the earth. It's actually feeling your desire, your call to be here on this planet, feeling, sensing, tasting, knowing the heart and mind of the earth. That is a consciousness that flows through our body, and it's in the lens of reality that we walk through. If we're not able to tune into those kinds of frequencies, we are often what people call ungrounded, okay, or traumatized. So this model has common pieces throughout many teachings on this planet. So when I go up further in the body, in the pelvic bowl, there's 2 lenses here. There's the telluric level lens, which is the consciousness of atoms and molecules, what happens when they exchange, and then another level of consciousness of like microorganisms, and then cells creating tissues and that kind of communication, and that just builds. And all of the 3D world is built on this telluric realm. And so the lens of the telluric realm is in the same place, and then you have just a little bit above that is the lens for the 3D. That's how you feel, sense yourself moving through the world. You throw an apple, it falls. 3D. We're pretty familiar with this. And then the lens above that is in our solar plexus area, and that's the collective conscious lens, but that's also our mental capacity lens. So we're connected to everything on a mental, emotional level through our solar plexus. And that's where you get people talking about consciousness grids, and people start talking about collective fields and stuff like this. So when you have if you look at how I see reality, is that it's a whole bunch of fields of thought forms and ideas and emotions and agreements and beliefs and stuff like this. And it's like a gazillion orbs of all different sizes. We're walking through a gazillion orbs with a million different sizes, and some of them are meshed within each other, and some overlap and some don't, right? Some behave more like a water balloon. But either way, we're wading through this field, and this is what I would call that 4D field. So whatever idea or belief that you have inside of your body, inside of your physicality, you're going to resonate with that in the collective, and then that's going to come in and inform your reality. And that is all happening on that 4D level field. 4D is also the perception of linear time. So this is the beta frequency is king here. How to put one foot in front of the other and organize something to make it happen in 3D. And then the lens above that is the heart lens. And this lens is really important because it gives us access to all other higher dimensional levels of perception. You have to have an open heart to perceive clearly the upper realms. So inside the heart lens, you can access things like your soul's journey, different places you've been in what we would perceive a past life, that river of life that is you from the moment of creation. That's all inside the physical heart space. And there's different layers to that kind of reality. There's the human layers and the non-human layers, but in general, it's like the more anchored we are in these lower lenses, the bigger our heart can open, and we can see and have contact with more kinds of consciousness because we are safe. We feel open and expanded and relaxed. And when we're in that state in our biosuit, in our body, we're going deep into theta delta. So we're more receptive. We're tuning very fine-tuned antennas at that point. And then we have the lens above that, which is in the neck, and this is the actual blueprint of your reality that's unfolding before you. So many people, many meditators have had the experience of meditating, going into a deep altered state and looking at themselves and seeing their body, just this body of light. And that's the light body. That's the blueprint that is unfolding, that is creating their reality. And that is a perception that we would associate with the neck. And that's also the process of sound creating shape. This is a rather new science that's emerging called cymatics that humans on this planet are now, experimenting with and doing lots of really cool stuff with. So it's like that level of consciousness. And that is the idea of how you use your sound to create a reality. And a good example of this, well, for an empath, this would be a good example, is when you're feeling something from somebody and you say something about it and they're like, oh no, it's just fine. That's not really how I feel. That's not really what's going on. You know what I mean? They start using their voice to negate and make wrong the reality that you're bringing forward to them. So that's an example of it being abused, but it also can be used in really beautiful ways as well. Like there's times when you can speak the truth and people just have this huge, this very simple truth, like maybe 4 or 5 sentences, and then people can have, if they're perceiving with just more than just their mind, they'll actually have a huge emotional response from that truth that was just spoken. So it's really powerful. And then, sorry if that sound is coming across the airwaves. It's crazy. There is huge softball-sized hail falling right now outside my house. I beg your pardon.
Where are you at right now?
I'm in Colorado.
Colorado. You can imagine hail was falling there. Still sunny around here, and I couldn't resist going out for a nice sun meditation before the show because I had been grounding myself all day. Definitely want to be grounded for this interview. So
yeah, I appreciate that. Is the sound coming? I
can hear it, but let's just ignore it. Let's work with nature and keep.
Okay.
Do you want to try to?
Can we pause for just one moment? Put a moving blanket on top of your car. Okay. Sorry, my daughter came in. She wanted her car's outside with the big hail, so she's concerned. If it doesn't stop in a minute, I'll continue. That's amazing, though. I haven't seen hail this size in ever, like decades.
Let's hope it doesn't have a power outage on your end. Shut down the power lines. That would be bad.
Oh yeah.
Never had a power outage while doing a radio show. Well, actually, once, but it came right back on, and so then the guests didn't know that it happened. So I don't think I'll edit any of this stuff out here. The listeners will get a kick out of listening to a hailstorm from Colorado. And, so that's not going to last very long. So don't have to go through the trouble of editing this out on the. So
Isn't that the truth? That's one of the sayings in Colorado. If you don't like the weather, just wait 10 minutes.
So is everything worked out, or can we continue, or do you need a couple?
Yeah, let's do it. That's fine. All right. So I left off with the lens for the 6th dimension, the light body lens. So 5D is the heart lens. The 6th dimension is the throat lens. And all these lenses exist within each other as well, but it just helps to give them a correlation in the body because there's parts of your endocrine system that are plugged into this. So after the throat lens, that power of sound creating reality, you go on to the intuitive complex that we have. Many people would call it the third eye, and that is the lens for perceiving frequencies. Pure frequencies. These are frequencies that aren't in the sound matrix or sound spectrum, and it's not necessarily light, though it could be because your subconscious can translate things like that. But it's really what the star people call it, and what the indigenous I've worked with have called it. They call it the highways of light. And this is these filaments of awareness that connect everything. We're all deeply interconnected. And these filaments of awareness, thoughts can travel. And I don't mean like mental thoughts. I mean like on a spiritual, more holistic level of self kind of thoughts can travel instantly, and we can pick up on that. And hence it started, we associate it with psychic abilities. And then there's the lens in the crown, which is our ability to connect to source, what many people would call God. It's like when we're in that crown space, we feel the all that is presence, and that's in a deeper level of that interconnectedness. And then above that is we're now leaving the body, but you can't be in a body without this lens, and that is this golden sun that's like an arm's length above you, where this is an access point for all spirit beings to come into a human body. So if you have a human body, this access point has to exist for the DNA to be imbued with life. And in this particular access point is the lens to the galactic mind, the Milky Way galaxy herself. And this is a really powerful part of yourself to be aware of, because this is where you understand your true nature. And your true nature is endless, infinite well of love and compassion. That's our true nature. And when we bring that into our 3D world, that's what many people would call an awakened bodhisattva self, an awakened bodhisattva. And so see, each of these lenses have a lot of connections with different spiritual teachings, though it's not a spiritual practice. Okay. A lot of people call the Milky Way galaxy the galactic mind. When you woke to that level, you awoke to your Kuan Yin levels. Some people use that language. So when you have all these levels working at the same time simultaneously through your 3D reality, you have a huge impact. After you've passed the initiations of 3D, you have a very huge impact as a human being, not just in your life, but in the collective as well. So just real quick, the initiations to be in 3D, to truly be an impactful, potent human in 3D, is how to deal with power, how to deal with money, how to deal with proper use of sexual energy, and how to deal with proper use of fame. Those 4 levels are initiations for a being in a human body to master 3D. And then after that, you go into other practices that where you're liberating humans rather than on a self-awakening journey. Because as Nelson Mandela said, that no freedom is worth having if it doesn't unbound everybody. Would you agree?
Yes, and that raises the whole controversy regarding how much can an individual who changes his life for the better affect the collective, and also can should an individual actually work on trying to focus on the collective based on the ideology that the collective that he's perceiving is a reflection of him. So how
Right.
can you do inner work without trying to change the world, if you get my drift?
Totally.
So I've been
This
well,
is a really good point that you bring up.
yeah, so I'm wondering about this, and I've been hearing a lot of people, with me specifically, say you need to focus a lot more on your inner work, and I've been getting a lot of backlash recently for my poor attitude that I've shown regarding what happened at Powered Light Holistic Expo, which I don't really need to get into. Let's just say I was kicked out for an unfair reason. I've kind of gone over the edge and result to make it clear that they kicked me out for an unjustified reason. I've tried to go about justice in ways that people think I'm going overboard, and that's kind of a poor attitude way. But I'm thinking, okay, if I were to sit back and do nothing, I'm basically saying these people can continue to do unjustified things to me. But then
Mm-hmm.
again, people say justice is glorified revenge, so you shouldn't seek justice. But then you hear people say justice is something you should always find. You got to draw a hard line and saddle up your boys, and if they don't, if you don't try to seek justice, then you're basically asking for more trouble. So it's kind of a hard way of making sense of whether or not you should go about trying to seek justice and all, and how should you go about it regarding focusing on your problems, inner work, and how to do that versus going out into the world, and maybe not with a bullhorn like Alex Jones style, but some other way of doing
Mm-hmm.
things. How do you make sense of focusing on healing yourself versus healing the world, and
Yeah.
making sense of the how to do it?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Um, I think I struggled with this thought many years ago because it didn't seem like it was effective. Like I would meditate and do work, and then it seemed like not much was changing on the outside. I'd still be frustrated. And for what I realized is that I just didn't understand that what inner work was exactly. I mean, there's a level of quieting the mind, of course, and meditating, but there's another level of inner work, and that is working with your presence and working with what is going on inside of yourself and being present with it no matter what, as in not making it wrong, not making it, not pushing it away, and allowing it to be there, and then seeing what it does. And ultimately, what this ends up doing once you master the skill, which takes a long time to master, a witness on that level, especially with emotional stuff and trauma stuff that releases. But what this really means, and I say this sentence a lot, that is, you need to let go of who you think you are. And the more we can let go of who we think we are, the more we can wake up to the other levels of who we are on these other higher manifestation levels, you know? So for example, it's like I'm me. I have my face that I walk through the world, but it's not informing me in my relationships. In my relationships, I'm really clear that of the interconnectedness, and you know what I mean? I have a very different kind of space I hold inside of myself for these external relationships. And these external relationships are high quality interconnected relationships because I've done the inner work that I needed to do so I can hold that kind of space within myself. So there's that kind of effect that we have, but it gets even deeper. It gets even deeper because once you can get into the cellular level, that telluric realm that I was talking about, once you can start releasing from that level, it will actually, things will just fall right out of the hologram around you. You know, they'll just fall right out and be gone. And an example I have is a story that I tell sometimes, and I don't know if I told it at the conference or not, but I'll just share it here. Is I was walking with my dog one day, and we went to this edge of this open space. There's a lot of open spaces in Boulder County, and the open space has a creek running through it. I live in kind of like high desert, very arid area, so a creek is a very big deal to the wildlife. And well, everybody enjoys the creek. And we went there, and there was those machineries that were just mowing down trees and just ripping out all the nature. And I was stunned. I was pissed. I was like, a slew of emotions came through. And I was like, I was seeing red, you know, all this stuff. And I was thinking about if I had the number of anybody in that HOA. And I mean, I was ready to, like, you know, start making phone calls and taking action, right? And then I was the only one that noticed it, though. You know, no one really said anything that I passed on the path. And then I looked at the sun, and at the time I was sun gazing a lot, and all of a sudden the sun was like right up to me and in me, and all I did see was sunlight inside of my body. And I went into an altered state, and when I came back from that altered state, I was on my patio with my dog, sitting down, and it was just like, I don't really remember coming home, but okay, here I am. So at the time I was doing a 30-day video challenge on my Facebook group. And so I was recounting my event of that day. And I was very upset, lots of tears, and just angry with humanity. Don't they know? Why can't we accept that we're stewards? You know, all this stuff. And I finished my clearing work. So I did the video, and then my routine to go to bed is, you know, I go into an altered state right even before I go to sleep. And I was doing my healing work, which was going in and feeling all those feelings, and then touching base with all this stuff that was happening in past lives. So those feelings that I was having was more than just that event. It was all these events in my past life experiences in that 5D realm, which is an outer nesting doll to this realm. And then I saw even beyond that, in the 60 realm, and I just saw all these different levels of myself in these more outer realms that create our reality here. And normally it's living in the subconscious, but for me it's in my awareness. So all that stuff was moving through, and then I woke up that morning, and it just felt different. I didn't know why it was different. It just felt different. Even my dog was kind of like weird, and we went out for our walk, and we got to the end of the sidewalk, and I was stunned because when we went to the creek, none of that nature was ripped out anymore. It was all there, completely intact. And so it's like this story is, to me, illustrates the power that we have when we're able to make very deep shifts from within ourselves. I have a woman that I worked with a while ago. Her name is Almeen. Love Almeen. She's a very brave, courageous spirit that, speaks about things. She's really way ahead of her time, let's say it like that. And she told a story about a psychiatrist in Germany taking over a mental insane asylum. And it was an asylum for the criminally insane. That's it. And the staff was really confused by him because he didn't want to see the patients at all. He only wanted to see their file. He did not want to have contact with the patients, and the staff was really perplexed. And the energy there at that place was really terrible. It's like every shift had to have double the staff scheduled than what they needed because people called off so often, and the turnover rate was so high. So it was a really miserable place to work as well, not just for the inmates. So what this doctor did was he actually went through those files and started, this is the story she told, he was going through the files and he started healing all the aspects, all the things that were getting triggered inside of him when he was reading about his clients, or not clients, I'm sorry, patients, and as he worked out all the stuff inside of him that was connected with those patients, they got better. And eventually, the place turned around, and people were actually recovering from their illnesses rather than just being endlessly drugged and dropped in a hole somewhere, which is usually what happens to the criminally insane. There's not a very good outcome for them in a human body. So there's many stories like this where people are changing their outside world by going deep inside and working what is inside of them in relationship to what they're seeing on the outside. And it's hard to believe that until you have your own experience of that. And that's kind of a thing there. Because until it actually happens for you, it's kind of like you have to just make a leap of faith. And I know that people are kind of feeling, kind of like their faith has been taken advantage of a lot. And is this just another thing that's going to turn out to be a lie? Like, all our religions and other, spiritual traditions on this planet.
Yes. And let's hear my echo in the background there, but glad it's not there now. As far as your presentation that you gave at the Cosmic Reset, I don't remember if your presentation was one of the ones that the entity sabotaged me and made me zonk out against my will when I was dying to listen to those presentations. But if it was, well, why don't you take this opportunity on my show now to regurgitate everything that you would have said in that presentation to refresh my memory and also make the most of this time that we have together, so give something to talk about. So what was your presentation about, and please regurgitate everything by all means if you remember what you talked about.
Okay. Well, I was hoping I answered that question all the way that you asked, because it was such a good question. Okay. So before I go down that road, I just want to say that, our belief systems are really our own prisons. We'll defend our prison bars tooth and nail and even to the death much of the time. But really, these belief systems keep us trapped in ideas that have no solution, that have no result. It's in disempowerment programs over and over and over again, layered on top of each other. So the stories that I'm telling bump up against belief systems because we are unable to let go of how we think reality is right now, and we rather believe or have the prison than visit the idea that there's something else that will break us free, and making the effort towards that. It's like belief systems are some of the most crippling things for the human consciousness. As a multidimensional, looking into the way humans interact and how they are with reality. And I speak it as separate because I feel like I'm human, but I'm not that kind of human. It's like I can't even relate to a lot of the realities that humans put a lot of energy into. So I kind of feel like there's a little bit of separateness with that. But yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and talk about what I was there to discuss at the Cosmic Reset. At the Cosmic Reset conference, I was there to talk about the 3 keys to accelerating your psychic intuitive abilities, and how I came across these 3 keys. Like I had my own journey, life's journey, but the past several years, I would say maybe 5 years, I've been working a lot with these interdimensional beings called Sasquatch. And now what I mean is not like the wild animals that a lot of people consider Bigfoot, Sasquatch to be, but I'm talking about the highly psychic, intuitive light beings that are Sasquatch, and these are amazing creatures. For them to get close they stay away from humans because it really is too much of a shock to the human system to be in their field. Which I don't know if any of you or if any of your listeners have ever visited a really high-level master. When you're in that kind of field, you get affected. There's things that start happening inside of you when you're in a field of that kind of of multidimensional frequency, like this, anchored into the body. So the Sasquatch have a similar thing going on, and they've been reaching out to me in different ways back then, and eventually I said yes to talking with them more often. And what they did was, pretty much say that, let's they knew that my agenda was to help awaken humanity, and the psychic intuitive abilities is a big piece to that, so they can see past who they think they are. They can see past the mind and the stories they tell themselves of who they think they are. And they gave me 3 keys that they said I already knew, but weren't consolidated. And so they worked with me in working with these 3 keys, and I can say that they absolutely do work. I've worked with humans for a few years now, and they exponentially enhance in their perceptions and become liberated in ways that are like beyond words. And I really feel like this is possible because of the new paradigm we're in. I don't think this would have been possible 10 years ago, or in the previous to 2012. So these 3 keys are ways to focus your awareness that open you up to more sensitivity and open you up to other data sets that your biosuit, your body, is giving to your awareness. And the first key is to tune into your own rhythms, to tune into your own body. And on the surface level, that there's the breath, right? We breathe and we feel the rhythm of our breath. Most Westerners, however, when they start breathing, they want to start taking control. So most practices involve breathing exercises, like doing specific things with your breath to induce altered states. And this is a valid method, but part of what I encourage is to sit back and listen to the rhythms. Just listen to what the breath sounds like. Just watch what it does without any kind of influence. And just practicing that helps us loosen our grip of control that we have on the world around us. Because when we're in resistance mode, we're making a lot of things wrong. We're in a place of distortion and disconnection. But when we can relax and just listen to the breath, for example, our nervous system starts to relax and we become more open and responsive and sensitive. So there's the listening to the breath, and then after that, it's listening to the heartbeat. And as you listen to the heartbeat, even that is a journey in itself for a lot of folks, because like if you were to pause right now, if I were to pause right now, I can sink right down and feel my heartbeat in my chest. A lot of people have difficulty with that. So what I would ask them to do is listen to their pulse. Listen to the pulse with your fingers, either on your wrist or on your neck, stuff like that. And as Chinese medicine has taught us, when you're listening to the pulse, there's many pulses within that pulse. So our pulse is actually a hyperdimensional doorway of perceptions for us, and it has lots of ramifications. beyond just the sound that we hear and the sensations that we have. It actually takes our awareness deeper, deeper, deeper into our body, into the places of our body that makes us solid and what one would say grounded and centered in a very quick way without losing energy. And it also tunes us into the stream of life force that has led up to the here and now moment that we're walking. So that life force is not just this life, but it's many lives, and it's also our ancestors. So there's this life force of the river of life force that's coming to us, and by listening to the heartbeat and calming your systems and being open, you're allowing yourself to receive that life force in more exponential ways. And once you fill your awareness with those rhythms and that life force is flowing through you in an increased way, you start to have more awarenesses. You start to be aware of other things that you weren't aware of before. Maybe you'll notice your energy field, or maybe you'll notice that there's like a being standing next to you, or maybe you'll notice there's a buzz happening in your ear. Like tinnitus is a really common thing for multidimensionals. So it's a way to alter the relationship, your perceptual relationship to your outer reality. You shift it inside, and then it changes the relationship on the outside, and you start receiving different pieces of information about your surroundings by tuning into the pulses like that.
That's generally the gist of it.
Well, that's the first key. I can go through all three keys, but
by all means.
Okay. So the key after that is, and actually I believe the second key is the one that gave you a lot of problems, Andrew. Now I remember, you did not fall asleep. I think you might have been trying to take me seriously because some of the things I was saying. The need to give things meaning. That means when you have data sets, multidimensional data sets coming into your awareness, and you're trying to qualify them with the mental field, most of those data sets don't qualify or can't qualify. And if we don't understand what it means, we kind of throw it out or just kind of disregard it. And that's part of the human blindness. These subtle things are actually really significant. It's just our mind can't touch it. And since we lost, many Westerners especially, have lost the ability to perceive beyond the mind, so that's why a lot of beings think humanity is asleep, because we're very limited in the bandwidth of what we perceive. So Lao Tzu, a famous Chinese philosopher, he talked about as soon as you kill something, as soon as you give it a meaning or a label or put it in a box, and he taught that in order to see beyond what is known, in order to go beyond the situation at hand and change it, you have to let go of what you think it is, so other options can become available, like other perceptions can become available. So this is not an out of this world kind of teaching. It's more of it's just different. It's different to the Western mind, especially. So that those lenses that I was talking about, there's only three or four lenses that can be touched by the mental field. So like the telluric reality can be touched by the mental field through dowsing and microscopes and different equipment that we use to measure energies and look into the cellular world, anatomic world. And then you have dowsing and divination techniques that you can use to get information from the fifth dimension and above. But that's pretty much all you have to bring information from those realms into an understanding. But really that's truncating it. Really what's important to be able to do is to let go of any need to understand and just let the pure experience be what it is. And in the being of that, you're shifting very significant energies within yourself, and you're empowering yourself with being able to connect with other levels of who you are. So there's times when I'm working with energies, like say in a human body, and I'm really high up in the galactic mind level, and I can see the trauma that's wound up in the tissues of the physical body, but then I also see a connection with ancestors. I can just hold those pieces in my awareness while I'm in in that Bodhisattva galactic mind awareness at the same time. And just having those two things get connected, that trauma starts releasing out of the body and out of the lineage as well. It's that simple. But what's not simple is releasing all of the blinders that we have to being able to sit in that level of our being, because it's not in the mind. It's not this or that. It's not negative or positive. It's a state of all just is. And holding other things in that state of awareness shifts them. It changes them. You watch them unravel. I was in I was at Boynton Canyon in Sedona a while back, and there was an event that happened, and it started off what one would consider very negative. There was these very large beings, very aggressive. This is energetic, of course. Looking like they wanted to cause harm. But I was already in that state of being, that multidimensional state of being. So as soon as our eyes made contact, it's like I watched these beings remember themselves. Then all of a sudden, they weren't these dark, angry, aggressive beings anymore. The energy completely shifted, and they remembered themselves on another level. And now that level of their existence, that identity is no longer what they want, so it's no longer so anymore. And then that energy's gone. So it's like that. It works just like that. You can do this with lifetimes. You can do this with pain in the body. You can do this with situations that are happening in the world. You can touch anything with this kind of awareness and watch things shift. Let's see. Then the third key is cultivating an exospecies relationship. And what I mean by exospecies, I'm talking about any intelligent, sentient consciousness that is not human. So that could be interdimensional beings, that can be extraterrestrial beings, that could be angels, fairies, devas. It can be any of those kingdoms are represented, or in my mind, are represented by the term exospecies. So when you are able to connect with, when you've softened enough to be able, when people have softened their presence enough and allowed themselves to be receptive in very deep ways, other beings start feeling safe to connect with you. Because humans really are not safe for most interdimensional, extradimensional beings to communicate with, because we're very violent with our thoughts and with our emotions. And that actually causes harm to some of those beings, the realm of some of those beings. So many just like stay away from humans, especially in the natural world, like forest creatures and stuff like this. They pretty much stay away, usually. But then you have ones that are operating in a directive to reach out to humanity, and that's the beings like the Sasquatch, and that's the beings like the ant people, and some other interdimensional, extradimensional intelligence. And when you're able to cultivate a healthy, autonomous relationship with those kinds of beings, you expand your consciousness, and you are able to let go of those pieces of those belief systems, limited belief systems, and limited levels of identity of who you thought you were. Because very often when you start communicating with an exospecies, let us say it's a Sasquatch, your memories of who you were before you were the person you are now, your past life memories, for lack of a better term, start coming online, and you start to realize a lot of the stories that you thought defined you were absolutely irrelevant. So it's very liberating in that way to communicate and have relationships. But it's also liberating in that they have a resonance and a reality that gives us an ability to shift things inside of us, so we can shift our external reality. An example of that would be, not that long ago, I did an activation where beings were approaching, helping us work out our government issues, because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on with our leadership. Our leadership, well, I don't need to tell you, dear Andrew, our leadership is quite messed up right now on this planet. And so I was doing an activation of helping people find what sacred reign, what sacred government looked like inside of them, because this work is all about changing the inside. And what happened was that beings started to come forward holding the frequency of what their government, what their governing bodies look like. So beings like the Pleiadians came, and beings like different levels of praying mantis beings came, and different ETs and interdimensional beings came in to hold what their group organizations ways of organizing looks like. And it was profound to have them hold the fields while we sat in that and sunk into our own realization of what a sacred reign would look like for a human on this planet. So there's advantages like that too. I have lots of stories for all these, and what's really awesome is that I'm not alone in these experiences. I have an academy for multidimensionals, and everybody in the project is having miraculous experiences with their working with these exospecies and working with these three keys. We have people who've healed themselves from incurable diseases. We have people who have completely liberated their lives from dysfunctional, abusive relationships. We have, I mean, there's so many walks of life and so many miracle stories that arise from the people in the project because they're applying these keys and they're liberating themselves on a multidimensional level. I don't feel trapped by time. I don't feel trapped by money or by government. I feel the pain that is around me. I absolutely feel it, and I don't push it away because that's why I'm there, is to be with that suffering, right, in that moment. But I don't feel like it's confined and confining and entrapping. I actually feel like amazing things are about to happen for humanity. I feel like miracles are happening every day, and when I meditate, I can feel the millions of other light beings that are awoke in their human bodies doing their work around this planet. So I don't feel hopeless or victimized or anything, even though I do see the suffering and I do feel the suffering. I don't feel, I'm not lost to it, and I understand that this is a process of purging and releasing, and there's a lot of pain that people need to let themselves have so we can step into that new paradigm and even more liberated, like not as a mass traumatized species, but as an empowered species that is deeply connected, that knows that they belong to nature, that are stewards of this reality, and that we are the ones who create our reality. It's not created for us or to us. You know what I mean? It's like we are the ones who are in charge. If there's an injustice in the world, we are the ones that need to do something about it, not a governing force. And so it's like we're not willing to give our power, as we step into our autonomy, we're not willing to give our power away the way we've been taught to for so many generations. So I foresee things like, more local kind of rule coming on board in humanity. I don't necessarily know how it's going to happen, but I see shifting like that going on. And I also see people realizing that they have a lot of power, even with their money and how they direct it. If you don't like a corporation, a monster corporation that's doing terrible things, don't go there. It's like you could just make that choice. There's in Colorado here, there's a lot of people who are, just say rebels, to the man, so to speak. And there's a lot of locally owned businesses here. People really like to keep their money in this area, and they and they do. There's a lot of off the grid homes. There's a lot of solar stuff. There's a lot of active communities here that are pulling forward another way of living, like food. We have CSAs everywhere, which is really awesome. There's a road that you can drive down that's a lot of country land or a farmland in between two cities, and there's all kinds of CSAs that you can join for any kind of food that you want in this area. So people are making a big effort to have their things locally grown because there's an impact, environmentally by doing that. Not to mention spiritually, because it connects you more deeply with the land, which is that telluric level of intelligence that I was talking about. So there's stuff like that. I do see people wanting to hold on to the program because the idea of freedom is absolutely terrifying. So a lot of humanity, I think, holds on to what they know because the unknown is even more scary than the pain of what they know. What do you think about that, Andrew? That statement?
Oh my God, you don't even know how much that drives me crazy to realize that. In fact, since you bring that up, I might as well take this moment to read something that every so often I bring up on my show, and I think I might as well bring it up now because the conversation has just taken a point where it's so probably okay for me to read it. That would be, scroll down the page here. It's got to be yours. Oh, here it is. Okay, Kasha Records reader Andrew Bartz often releases insights of his in emails. He's probably my number one source of information on my show because I consider his Akashic Records reading skills to be the best source of information, probably to get the answer to any question. And he released this short little thing about the future, and he called it the future with a question mark after the word future. And I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
read it here out loud and let you know when I'm done. And then I guess I'll get your take on it from here. Here it is. Quote: You want to know what it's going to be like in the future. It's about saving our culture. It's about cleaning up our planet. You know, the financial system can be taken care of. It's already been thought of. But to implement a new financial system means there has to be a time for us as a human species to let down, to sleep, to heal. Okay, there was a time when human awakening began on another previous timeline genocide during the second paradox where we made it to 2004 and our species was told about UFOs, and it was so harsh in the way that it came through. Not that the media did it wrong and during their breakdown it was okay. Our people, ourself, were so confounded by the lies that many of them just stopped living, and the whole society and the whole structure fell apart, and that cannot happen. There cannot be a cultural breakdown. Something of our food has to survive. Something of the way we live has to survive. There was incredibly beautiful lifetimes here. It has not all been dark. It is just propaganda that has made it look that way, unquote. Okay, the point is, um, humans, if the truth were rubbed in their face, they would lose touch with reality and not be able to handle the truth and would probably not be able to get out of bed in the morning. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of sad, pathetic, and well,
True.
it's being used as an excuse by some ET councils, according to Corey Good anyway, to why they're not releasing everything all at once. I mean, we could make oil obsolete. We could make money obsolete. We could shut the bankers down in a heartbeat. We could release everything that would allow us to travel lickety split to one end of the galaxy to the other using quantum entanglement at a macroscopic level. But the reason we don't do it is because humans couldn't really handle the shock to the system too well.
Yeah.
And I find that to be quite disturbing and sad and pathetic. And it kind of makes me, well, you really shouldn't worry about time because time's an illusion. But then again, how can you not hear something like this and think, how much longer? I mean, why should we have to release things bit by bit, little by little, when
Mm-hmm.
that's just gonna ultimately make us like, uh, put it this way, I don't want to be 99 years old when the information gets released. Okay, that's kind of ridiculous, but that
Right,
seems to
right.
be the way it is. And why is that? Okay, now you can give your take on this. I babbled long
Yes.
enough.
Yes, as take it from someone who has stuck their finger in the spiritual lightning socket many times, I can completely confirm that you can cause serious damage to a human if you wake them up too fast. There's cases being people have shared about their Kundalini awakening experience, and it usually starts off with an extremely traumatic event or illness or something that has happened to them. And that's because of the density of who we think we are, so is woven into our biosuit and the belief systems and stuff like this. So it's like we need to remember those lenses I talked about earlier. Those are like nesting dolls of reality. They all fit inside of each other and permeate within each other. So the humans are very convinced that they are who they think they are. And there's a lot of programming down to the DNA a level that keeps us confined to that. We're actually engineered even to have severe shock and trauma when confronted with something we can't deal with. So this is one of the reasons why the ant people say that they don't come out in physical form to humans, because they're programmed to go into shock, and as you know, you can actually die of shock. So they don't want to do that. There's a compassionate piece there,
Well, if I
and
can
that
interrupt you
is
for
also.
just a moment, how did we get manipulated like that? Was it like the Anunnaki and the reptilians forming the alliance to genetically engineer humanity, like David Icke and Zachariah Sitchin talk about? Was that when they decided to do that to us? They decided, okay, in order to make this humans slaves
Mhm.
species, we need to make them fearful and paradigmatic and unable to handle the truth. So we'll do that to our DNA? Is that when it happened, or where are you making that assertion that we are programmed to lose touch
Mhm.
with reality if we can't handle the truth, or if the truth comes to us and we can't handle it? Where's your
Right. So
proof of
so
that?
there so there are manipulations done on that level, but there's also deep manipulations done on a planetary level, a planetary mind level. So right, the Zachariah Sitchin story, I know what you're talking about. I feel like those are two stories woven together. I think that in the perception of the other exospecies that I've communicated with and developed relations with, it's like humans really have been around for millions of years, and we kind of have been on Groundhog's Day, like the awakening, Groundhog's Day of awakening over and over again. Like every 20,000 years we relive it, right? 26,000 years, whatever the that number is for the precession of the equinox. So there's that level, but there's insectoid level in perpetration. When we were first so the story that I really resonate with that has been told to me recently, because I've been doing a lot of work with exospecies in relationship to getting free energy technology released, getting humanity to be able to handle free energy technology. And actually, I'd love to talk about that if we have time later. Um,
By all means, I definitely want to talk about that, because I this is one of my biggest pet peeves of them all, the fact that we are still slaves because technology that could make the dollar obsolete and oil obsolete is not being revealed. So yes, anything to speed up the process, please. If you can
yeah.
talk about it, yes, let's do that.
Okay, well, let me finish this thread, and then we'll go on to that piece. So this thread is about humanity not being ready. So all right, so the most recent story of records that I've come across is, there's these stories of root races. This is in the Vedic scriptures, which is some of the oldest scriptures that we have on this planet, and that is a progression of races. And before the humans, there were the Hyperboreans, and they were giants. And really, the loss of consciousness started with them. There was something called the electricity wars, and electricity, the nature of electricity as we know it now, was inserted deep into the consciousness of the planet, and it was kind of, and the inception began then. So that was inserted in the center of the planet, and then it took several hundred thousands of years for it to come out and affecting the creatures that were evolving on the planet. So, and this is where the Hyperboreans lost their center, their connection to source, and warring began to happen a lot between the giants and the humans. And then so there's that. Humans before that were completely connected to source as well. They were fully aware of who they were as a multidimensional light being in a human body. And then from there, things progressed downwards. The most recent degradation to happen was the mass traumatization of the species, and that comes from the stories that we know as the fall of Atlantis. So it's not that it's a test tube and things are happening. It's that it's more of our lenses to these dimensions of consciousness get skewed, and it starts creating distortions in that kind of reality, and then we no longer have a clean relationship to it. It turns into an enmity relationship that is hostile or opposite. One of the deepest wounds for a human is the feeling of forsakenness. If people work with hypnotherapy and psychological levels, it's like that is some of the core wounds for all of humanity, is feeling like they've been forsaken by God. Now, whether you're religious or not, it doesn't matter. We still have that feeling when we're in desperate moments, when we're in, when life has put something on us that makes us break, where we feel like we just completely collapse. It's like we have to get to that place And if we can feel it all the way, it's a healing situation. And if we avoid it and push it away, then it's just kind of like another wound that we carry, to add it to the bag of wounds, the backpack of that. And really, the beings that are doing the grassroots disclosure, I'm really behind because they're very compassionate and they understand the intensity. And here's the story for that intensity. I don't know, Andrew, have you done any mind altering experiences or had an ayahuasca journey or something really intense like that in your
Yes,
in
two
your experience?
ayahuasca experiences, San Pedro and peyote. I've tried them all in ceremony in Peru and Arizona. I know what
Okay.
it's like.
So did you get sick at all? Did you vomit or anything like that?
Of course, isn't that part of the purge? The ayahuasca purge is to puke and
Well, it's very common. Yes,
yeah.
that's the usual. It doesn't have to be that way, but yeah, that is the way. Okay, so imagine all of humanity got like a mega freaking dose of ayahuasca, and people have psychotic breaks doing that sometimes. I mean, people really um, have a life-shattering experience with plant medicine like that. So disclosure, like to the real truth, is like whacking humanity with something like that. It's just dropping them in the deep end and not giving them any support, no shaman to help them out. They're just wide open. Here, this is surprise. Look at all this shit. All this shit has been affecting you for millions of years. It's wounding, it's pain, it's scary. Humans don't know how to handle that. They need support. They need to know their strength. They need to know their center so they understand that they have a purpose and place in all that is not a victimhood but in a powering role. Like they have a place of power in that scenario. They just don't know it because it's such a foreign thing. I had a Sasquatch come very, very close into my field last year when I was at the conference, the Psychic Sasquatch Spiritual Retreat Conference, and it really felt like I drank very strong plant medicine. It was like I was disoriented. I was going very altered. The whole DMT experience is kind of like an understatement to having them very closely in my field. And I'm a multidimensional that has done a lot of work. So if it's altering for me, I just imagine how I can only imagine how it is for a regular human, that works in everyday world that really thinks that their name is Mr. Smith and they work here and they have two kids and they drive a car and they pay rent and they're in that matrix. To pull them out of that matrix and put them into what the real reality is about, it's going to freak them out. It'll
Well, yes,
terrify
it's
them.
funny you mentioned that, and I kind of have to interrupt you here because my ayahuasca experience was it's not so much the experience as what happened afterwards that was really jaw-dropping to me. And well, um, when I went down
Yeah,
to
let's hear it.
Peru in December around the what was the summer solstice in that part of the world because the southern hemisphere, right before Christmas, and did a couple of ayahuasca ceremonies. I mean, everything was cool. Everything went great. I loved the ceremonies. I felt it was enlightening. I felt it was cozy. After the vomiting felt bad, but then after vomiting, I never felt better, and it was really relaxing. And even though ayahuasca kept me awake until the birds started chirping, and the next day I had to relax all day, it was still totally worthwhile to do that. And I did feel like a changed person when I came back home. However, it hit me like a ton of bricks during the we also went to Machu Picchu, by the way, and did a San Pedro ceremony, and that was also great. But it turned out that after the ceremony was over, the guy who led the thing, he did sessions one on one with me and the rest of the people that were at the conference at that retreat. And when he talked to me, he actually said something that one of the last things I would expect someone who gives ayahuasca to actually say to someone. He actually said to me, I am kind of worried about you, Andrew. I would recommend that when you go back to America, you seek therapy and consider taking medication because you come across as a schizophrenic or someone with an autistic spectrum disorder. And that hit me like a ton of bricks because I would not expect someone who does ayahuasca ceremonies to actually belittle or think negatively of someone like I who has like schizophrenic or autistic spectrum characteristics, which I must say have helped me do this radio show to a great extent and talk about things that the average human would not even consider talking about in public because they fear what other people think. But
Mhm.
I mean, it's like, I mean, everybody else who he must have given ayahuasca to must have been a sheeple. And then all of a sudden, he gets this one guy like me who's already awakened and thinks he's got nothing to lose and everything to gain by trying ayahuasca. And because I'm like the only person he's ever done a ceremony with that's not a sheep, he seems to say, um, seek therapy and take
Yeah.
medication, which is only going to damage your brain like crazy and is the worst medicine, 10 times worse than like ayahuasca's medicine medication that psychiatrists give you fries your brain. It made
Yeah.
no sense to me that that was the only reason when I did a review of the center I gave him 4 stars instead of 5 stars because for him to tell me
Oh,
that was really
well,
really it made no sense. So how can I make sense
I
of
know.
something like that?
Andrew, you're touching on a point that actually I have a lot of feelings about because like I said, I have past life memories, and I remember being holding the working with the spirit of ayahuasca, and these are living beings, these are living consciousness that help humanity, and there's a lot of people pouring ayahuasca ceremonies that shouldn't be, in my personal opinion. And like for example, I did ayahuasca as well, but my particular ayahuasqueros that I worked with, he was materializing in my bedroom for weeks before I ever met him. You know what I mean? He was like coming into my dreams and coming into my meditations, and there's times when I open my medicine bundle and he would be standing there. I mean, so it was like he was a bilocator, he was a shape shifter. He had extraordinary abilities as a human. And he told us, once I went there and I met him. I was with a group, and what he said was is that he was trained the traditional way, where you take a 7-year hermitage deep into the jungle, and it's the language of the jungle that teaches you how to work with these spirits and how to work with the cosmic forces and such. And that's the only way, and that's the way it's been, and that's the only way you can truly reach those places by yourself, is working in that way. And most ayahuasqueros, I have to tell you, do not do that. They have a spiritual practice and they love what they do, and they have ayahuasca and they have a resonance with the spirit, but they're not the clear vessel that the traditional ayahuasqueros are. Unfortunately, they're a bit of a dying breed. There's not many of them, I think, available these days. But um, I live in Colorado, and ayahuasca is a huge thing, and people do it all the time, and I don't understand it. I don't understand why they do that, because it's like you only can really reach safely as far as your facilitator has reached. And if your facilitator doesn't know who they are beyond the galactic mind, you're kind of screwed. You're not, you know what I mean? It's like the real gift, you don't get to go as deep as you possibly can. You only can go as deep as that facilitator. And many people are drawn to ayahuasca because they want an awakening. They want a deep, realization of something. And sometimes, especially if it's a star seed, it's beyond that galactic level. It's beyond the galactic mind. So, so sorry, you're hitting on a point that I'm particularly salty about.
Right.
because
Well,
that
the
because
thing.
so him having that reaction to you is him not being clear inside of himself to who you are as a light being inside of a body. If he
Well, he
can't
seemed like a very
recognize
legitimate guy to be doing ayahuasca. I heard nothing but positive reviews from everyone else and
their
all the
bar is
sources
set low.
out there. So it seemed and the rituals were fascinating and definitely worthwhile. I could get with the beat with what they were saying and talking and doing, and then he ruined it all by saying, "I think you should get therapy and take psychiatric medication." That made no sense to me. That a guy who gives ayahuasca would say that, and I can only assume that he's all the people that he's ever dealt with must have been like sheep like people who wanted to take ayahuasca to get out of the matrix, and I was like the only one who's not lost in the matrix, and but I realized that can't be. I mean, am I so like out there compared to the to like other humans that it was unavoidable that I would have gotten a response like that no matter who what ayahuasca shaman I went to? I mean, I can't help but wonder, am I really that really that exceptional a case when it comes to being a human on Earth that nobody any shaman would have given me that statement after the
I
ceremony.
I can't imagine any qualified ayahuasqueros saying that to anybody, because that is addressing their separation. That means that you never shattered, you know. And if you never shattered, that's because that's part of the ayahuasca process, is shattering. You're being, you know, becoming, you know, obliterated into pieces. And this is well, I feel I'm affected by the story that you're telling me. Because I feel like that did you a disservice, you know, because you outside looking in as multidimensional, you're very in the place where a lot of humans are, that you have it when you have a very strong mind. That's kind of like the muscle you use all the time, and that's kind of like that's where you live, you know what I mean? And when you live in that place, you're not in your body as much as you could be, if you know, and if there's other pieces, that if maybe the mind wasn't so strong, or if you didn't live there full time. But you know, most Westerners live there full time, and I have to say most Westerners are not in their body, and they're impressed by very little, you know, when it comes to shamanic ceremonies. It's like, not that I'm saying that degrading them all. I don't mean that at all. I don't mean that, because they're sacred to the people that are holding them, of course. But the power that can, the things, the transformation that can happen in ceremonies like that is greatly diminished, because there's something that has been lost, really. There's something has been lost, either as the space holders or the facilitators or the people going. They never really get the full truth, I feel like, when I, as outside looking in. And maybe it could be because of the intention, or maybe it could be because uh, the facilitator doesn't know how to get the Westerners into their body, and they're just exploring different ways. I don't know. I suppose there's a lot of pieces in there, but
A lot
in
of
general,
unknowns. I'm not going to name the people out of respect for them. They did contact me a month ago and asked for me to write a review, and I did write the review, and I was generally positive, except like I said, I gave them 4 stars instead of 5 stars because that statement made me like a ton of bricks. And shortly thereafter, I heard one of them say, "I'm sorry," in the reply email. I don't know if they read what I wrote, or I don't know if I don't know. I thought it would have taken a few more days after he said that to upload to the net. So I don't know what he was apologizing for, but maybe he did see that. And well, I'm gonna actually try this all over again. My plan is in 2021. I'm not gonna do any international travel next year. I'm gonna try to stay within the states when I go about my awakening and conference going. But 2021, do want to kill two birds with one stone and do some yoga and ayahuasca down at the Rhythmia Center in Costa Rica. Uh, and well, that's they say it's expensive, although you can get a discount if you get the Spirit Science uh, code, whatever it is, there. And they're actually doing a once a month thing, lottery drawing, and I enter that. If Source really wants me to go down there, maybe I'll get lucky and I could go down there sometime before 2021. But also, I do plan on going to Africa sometime to do a iboga ceremony. And some would say, well, why do you have to travel all the way across the Atlantic to do that? There's plenty of places, and there are actually some places like similar to Rhythmia in Costa Rica that actually offer iboga. My argument would be, well, I kind of want to be in the atmosphere of where the plant originally came from. Like I could have,
mhm,
like ayahuasca comes mainly from the Peru area, so I went down there for it, and it doesn't really come from Costa Rica, but I see that as a two birds with one stone thing to do yoga and ayahuasca in one, so I figured I'd do that. But with iboga, I figure I should go to Africa because
mhm,
Africa is like where it comes from. I want to be in the true environment with the tribes people when I
mhm.
do it there. So, is there really a difference, to your knowledge, when people do these substances? Does being in the environment really make a difference? Someone doing it, going to all the way to Africa and spending a little extra money to do it because they want to be in the true homeland atmosphere of the substance versus going to
Yeah.
some cheaper place in Central America that just does it as part of a retreat purposes. Well, what's your take on that?
Oh yeah, I think it absolutely does make a difference, because, like I said before, this is a spirit that you're working with. Yes, there's molecules that have effects that open up the DMT stores and stuff in the body, but it's a spirit above all. And when you are approaching a spirit and working with the spirit, it's not about the language communication between you. It's about truly understanding each other in a very deep way. And of course, to understand the spirit it would be wise to go into the environment and into the lands that that spirit has spawned from, that it lives in. You know what I mean? That it's where its home is, and I think that's a great way to do it. That's wonderful because then you're giving big respect to the spirit that it is that important to you that you connect on all those levels. You're going through that, so it's a wonderful act of generosity and respect. I think to do that to meet the spirit.
Spend low extra money to go to Africa for a genuine Iboga ceremony rather than do a run of the mill ceremony in Central America. Okay, that's some advice worth taking. And also, another place on my list of places to go around the world, Indonesia, Bali, for the Spirit Festival that's held there once a year. And that place I hear is like a very hot spot in regards to Earth energy grid activity. Do you know
Hmm.
anything about that? About like the Bali Center of Indonesia, excuse me, being a very
Hmm.
big hotspot of ley line activity. That's why this that big spirit festival that's talked about is held there for a lot of things. And you know anything about that?
I don't know a lot about Bali and Indonesia, but I do know just I have friends that live there, and actually I know somebody who's built the center, who's building or building in the process of building a center there. It is a spiritual hotspot. I can confirm that. There's lots of ashrams and spiritual centers and Zen centers and stuff like that. And usually when things like that collect in an area, it's because the energy lines and you know what I mean, the biofields of that area are especially conducive to high spiritual work. We have a place here in the United States like that. It's called Crestone. There's over 150 Zen centers and ashrams and spiritual centers from around the world that are in this little tiny town that has a population of like 800. You know. um, and that's because that's a hyperdimensional place, and the biofields allow for that spiritual work, that high spiritual work to happen. It's also a ET hotspot. That's where Dr. Greer takes his people to have contact of the fifth kind, contact experiences of the fifth kind. So there are places like that for sure. I can confirm that and they're heavily used. People flock to them and they don't know why, but they do.
Right. And regarding the subject of people flocking to other places, that touches on another touchy subject that seems very prominent in the present day, the issue of unvetted immigration being used to destroy society by the powers that be in the present day. And I'm kind of the opinion that, well, this seems to be the ultimate agree to disagree area. I mean, you got one group, well, many groups actually, that would see immigration as basically when someone immigrate wants to immigrate to a country, you basically treat them like you're hiring them for a job because there's different countries, not all borders are created equal. There's different languages and different currencies, and that's the two reasons why it seems that in the real world open borders doesn't work. Different languages and different currencies. However, if we were to abolish money or at best have a global currency, and if everybody could communicate at the heart, soul, spirit level, then there would be a lot easier to have open borders, and we wouldn't need people to have passports and go through Ellis Island type processes. And it's interesting that many of the people in the American Patriot community that stand for what the founding fathers stood for really want the borders to be secure and closed and view national sovereignty and open and closed borders, secure borders as being a paramount way to get national sovereignty. But it's interesting that many people in the spiritual community, like you and me, they actually seem to to want borders to be open and say that we're all humans, we're all equal. There should be no reason why um, people should have to go through a process to have to cross a border and view it as a job. I mean, all the other ancient alien civilizations out there in the cosmos, do they have passport systems? They probably don't, considering that we're the only civilization in the cosmos that uses money. So Alex Collar's been saying that for years. So it kind of raises an interesting question because I hear David Icke, one of his interviews said the powers that be, they don't want borders. Well, is that maybe only a specific faction of powers that be? Because you would think that if humans were eventually to ascend to a high level of consciousness, they would evolve to a day where they wouldn't need borders anymore and could all
Mhm.
live in unity. So I'm sure that there are some powers that be who realize that, who actually do want borders. So that maybe
Mhm.
that these are a little fighting on their part. So now, my understanding from people that I've raised this issue with before is that it's basically a bandage issue. Like you got to bandage up the border in a few areas to make sure, like, society is a little more stable. But that doesn't really answer the question when it
Mhm.
comes to whether or not we can, at some point in the future, and should go to an open borders policy, because that's kind of in conjunction with what fifth dimensional living is all about. So, how do you see the issue of migrants and immigrants coming to other countries unvetted and vetting them, and whether or not it's appropriate to do it this way or
Mm.
that way?
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Well, I mean, I think there's some overlapping pieces that make it confusing. One is, there is a thought form that they don't want borders because they want one central power so they can consolidate power. So in the conspiracy kind of way, it's not a great thing because then you're setting the stage for one being to or one entity or whatever to come in and be in power of everything. So I understand why that's cautious. But that's opening the borders before humanity has a higher level of consciousness. And when humanity has reached that critical mass of higher level of consciousness, because our point of our society will no longer to work and pay bills. The point of our society is to live our purpose. You know what I mean? It's for the quality of all humans. And once we reach that level, then it's natural, very natural for the borders to dissolve because we're all living in a way that is intentionally harmonic with each other and with our environment and with nature and our resources. So I think humanity is gonna get there. I don't know how long, or if it's going to be, a big bang or a slow, slow ease to it. But that's what causes confusion. I think is that when you do things prematurely before it's actually the truth, then it's not the truth and it creates confusion. It's confusing because later on, when you are ready, when you truly are frequency matched to it, then all of a sudden it resonates as the truth. you know um, I think this is a learning process that humanity is going through right now on a collective level. And I mean, a great example would be, fake news, right? It's like how many people call fake news, and there's no news outlet that is not, second guessed because of this misinformation. We're getting very discerning in our abilities to look at this information that's meant to be confusing and inflammatory and getting something else out of it than what the intent and which the other than what the intention was, which was to create confusion. Does that make sense the way I'm saying that?
Yes, yes, and getting people selectively kicked off YouTube like Alex Jones was, and I actually found out today that he's on this alternate platform. I think it's called 2UBII or something like that.com. It's not very
Oh.
popular, but it was one that he had to go through because he can't go on YouTube anymore. And I hope it doesn't happen to me, although I did actually about a week ago get an email from the YouTube censorship Nazis of sorts, saying something about how my channel violates copyright, and they said fix that or you'll be kicked off. And there's nothing
Mm.
on my channel that violates copyright. I made sure of that, and the one and only thing that is copyrighted, I actually set it up so that they could actually make money off any advertisements that I'm
Mhm.
able to make off that. So it's kind of like a business partnership there, so it shouldn't be an issue. So
Mhm.
this is one of those selective things, and although it's kind of a miracle though that YouTube was willing to let me monetize again. The fact that they did kind of makes me wonder if, because there was a while where they said I could monetize, and every time I tried to reapply, when the only thing I had on my channel was radio interviews, they wouldn't let me do it. But then all of a sudden, recently, I was able to do it, and I don't know how long
Mm.
that's gonna last, but is that perhaps a sign that there are actually more white hats in the big corporations and such? Do you have anything to say about that? About white hats increasing in number in the big corporations and the government positions and all as we rise in consciousness?
Yeah, I can confirm I see this, especially in our business, in our government structures. There's some really, really amazing light beings and human bodies that are poised to take over in certain levels, especially in the East, in China and other Eastern governments. Um, this might be not Americans might not want to hear this, but the way things are going, we're not going to be the superpower anymore in this new kind of Earth. We're going to be kind of like the other guys, everybody else, and the superpower actually is said to rise. I don't know if it's going to happen the way the wording said, the word, because sometimes wordings give connotations that maybe aren't accurate. It's more of our own lenses. But the wording is that the next superpower that helps humanity shift their consciousness is East. It's Eastern power. So that could be Eurasia. That could be who knows. you know. Some people would automatically go to China because they're such a force right now. And because of the free energy information that I'm getting from different exospecies, I think that it might not be China. It could be someplace more Eastern Europe area. So can I talk a little bit about the free energy thing?
By all means, yeah, I wanted to get into that before the show
Okay.
ended. So yes, please talk
So
while you got the floor.
yes, okay, thank you. So humans have to be ready for free energy. It's just it's not that everything will change as soon as free energy comes about. It's like the humans have to be shifted enough where they're not tempted to misuse this free energy. And I guess the best story I have to explain what I mean by that is the Sasquatch conference that I went to. So this is not Bigfoot hunting Bigfoot. These are all people, all experiencers that have their own personal connection and stories of their experiences with Bigfoot, with Sasquatch. And many of those stories are these miraculous healing stories. Some people have had formulas given to them to heal diseases. Some people just have miraculous um, healings come on, or they wake up to something and a problem is solved. It's like they have this very loving, nurturing relationship with the Sasquatch. And as I said earlier in the interview, they're hyperdimensional beings, like times 1,000. So their consciousness fields have a profound impact on humanity. So we're at this conference and there's several hundred people, there's several hundred experiencers there, right? And if you weren't an experiencer when you got there, you definitely left as an experiencer, because the Sasquatch activity was just off the charts. I've never seen it ever so active ever in my life. And I actually facilitate meetings. I actually facilitate human meetings with the Sasquatch people. So it's like I have a lot of experience around that, and to see that much activity, it was really shocking. But the thing that I want to point out about this is that there are these fields that are being held together by the Sasquatch and other ET beings and other interdimensional beings, along with the humans. And what this does is it creates a super hyper dimensional refined field. And when a field is that refined, any thought, any emotion has a huge impact on that field. And the only way for humans to traverse it in a way that doesn't create impact, that doesn't create a push-pull kind of situation, is to be absolutely truthful and transparent in every way to everybody. Now, that kind of goes against Western sensibilities, because everybody is about who they think they are, and people want you to see them as they want you to see them, not really, how they really feel and how they are. So this is a bit problematic. And what the beings that I'm working with have shown me is that it's really because there's not that depth of harmony inside. It's there when with for the being that is inside a hyperdimensional biosuit. If the biosuit is full of conflict and trauma and all the stuff that needs cleared up, they are dangerous in those kinds of fields because they will actually start to believe their own lies that they tell themselves. Like, say somebody dropped some litter on the ground and another person finds it and they think that person dropped it on purpose and they're completely irresponsible, and then boom, they start going through the reel about humanity trashing the earth, when really it was just some kid that didn't realize it and dropped it. You know what I mean? But that person who found it is having a very strong emotional reaction, and that creates huge ripples in the field. And then what happens is that you end up having these strange, what someone might call psychic attack kind of situations, because someone is ruminating in negativity, blaming another being for something, And so this is a condition that humans are in, that they're learning how to let go of, how to heal and transcend. So harmony can be the dominant frequency inside of the body. Once harmony is the dominant frequency inside the body, this free energy technology that these beings are trying to introduce to humanity it's safe. It's more safe for them to hand it to humanity, because if you hand it to humanity and they haven't done that level of healing work, they can easily turn that kind of field into a weapon against whoever they think their enemy is. It could be your mother, it could be your brother, or it could be another country. It doesn't matter. It's like where you direct that energy, your emotions and your thought forms, is where the momentum is going to go, and you're going to start whacking people or nations. So it's imperative that humans do their personal work and find harmony within themselves in order to bring the possibility of free energy to proliferate through human realms. So there's free energy technology that doesn't have this kind of sensitive field, and those are the devices where they create more energy than they use up. So that is a kind of free energy, and that there are lots of devices like that. There's several here in Boulder County that I've seen that these people don't have any backing. They're not getting funded. They moved here with all excitement. It's like, oh, it's free energy. Who doesn't want to invest in that? And then they can't find any investors. Stuff like that happens. And there's some other forces that purposely suppress that kind of thing. It's like they'll try to hijack the patent and stuff like that. So there's that level of free energy technology. But then there's this whole other level of free energy technology, and that's the level I'm talking about, that these interdimensional beings want to bring forward and show us how to activate and use. And the cool thing is that these free energy technologies are actually built into our landscape. It's really quite profound, because it's a way of using water and energy lines and sun energy and specifically measured out portioned structures and stuff like this. And this is where my interest in pyramids started to arise, is because the free energy devices that I've been shown by these beings, they look very similar to a pyramid, and some of them are here in the United States, which is super cool.
Right, and when it comes to this technology being released and when it can be released, well, there's some debate as to when the ETs can show themselves. I mean, you got Bashar basically saying like 2025 to 2030 something being the earliest time frame, but then you got Brett Johnson who channels the Drones saying 2050 will be when the ETs can show themselves and say, here we are. Now you have no choice but to believe that the UFO nuts, ancient astronaut theorists, and ET nuts were right all along, because here we are.
I think it's going to be a lot sooner than that. A lot sooner than that. That's because I see it's happening now. It's a grassroots movement. It's not a government now revealing the secrets of all their interactions with ETs. It's not that. It's a grassroots movement. I can't tell you how many experiencers I come across nowadays. There's so many. Sasquatch, ant people, Palladium beings. There's these really crazy big, long, sticky kind of beings that people are experiencing. They're kind of new on the scene now. It's like beings are arising from inner earth, from interdimensional realms, and through ships and contacting the little people, the us, the you, me, our neighbors, and stuff like this. It's like that is the real movement, and it's happening right now. It's happening right now. And the fact that you can have more than 300 people get together and they're all Sasquatch experiencers, all walks of life from all around the world, I feel like is a testament to what I'm saying. It's we're experiencing it. We're the grassroots movement. So I
Oh,
talk about
okay.
it with
Well,
my family, and they accept it, and they see it, and they talk to their friends. You know what I mean? It's a ripple effect through our community.
well, it is, but the thing you say about it being a grassroots movement, so you think it's going to be sooner. Well, that's kind of the opposite of what some that are pessimistic about this would assert, saying that you have to understand that as long as the government and mainstream media don't acknowledge it, then it is not officially recognized. As ridiculous as that may seem, that is a fact of life. You need to get the government and the mainstream media to acknowledge it for it to be officially recognized. No matter how many YouTube videos are out there, the public will not acknowledge and believe it unless the government acknowledges it and mainstream media
Yeah.
acknowledges it. So, do you have any
Well,
response?
I think that's a power trip, because really what the proof in the pudding is a UFO revealing itself, and most of humanity saying, "Oh yeah, I recognize that." You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what the government says. All those YouTubers, all those experiencers, they know what they experience, and they know when they see it, they're not going to flip out. Maybe they're with some other people who aren't in the know, and they're flipping out, but then they're going to be like, "Dude, I totally saw that. Blah 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 blah. When I was 5, or when I was 10, or when we were hiking the mountains, and blah 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 happened." You know what I mean? It would be like these people will be like, "What?" And they're going to want to disbelieve you, but then they can't because there it is right in front of you. So I feel like the power, the media does not have the power that we think it has. The more we wake up our intuitive and our psychic levels, like the more we wake up to those levels, and we realize that they don't really have much power because we can see that it's all lies. It's all slanted, biased information formulated to engineer an opinion, right? Engineered to create an opinion. And when we only they only have the power over the people who believe them. I mean, that's me. I guess I'm a bit passionate about it, but I feel like we're in charge. We're in charge.
Well, I'm passionate
And but
about it
also,
too, and
you're talking to somebody. I actually don't. I don't even have a TV. I don't listen to media or anything, so I'm not affected by it. Perhaps how a lot of other humans are, because it's lies. So I don't bother investing any energy in it.
well, good for you, not having some of those things that'll keep you locked in the matrix. I still got a TV, and unfortunately, I'm gonna probably use it a little bit more this time of the year than other times of the year because I say there's basically only two things on TV that I watch: Ancient Aliens and Philadelphia Eagles football, and maybe some of the other teams that the Philadelphia Eagles would be rivaled against for playoff purposes. Then maybe I'm going to watch them and want them to lose. So I think NFL football makes a nice 3-hour vacation on a Sunday. Although I do record the games and skip over the commercials. Let's hope nobody ruins it for me and tells me what the score is. But it's that time
Yeah.
of year again, and there's going to be a lot of there are going to be sadly some couch potatoes out there in the next few months leading up until the whenever the Super Bowl is and whoever may win it, because everybody in America is fascinated by football. So, do you have any advice for the couch potatoes out there, or anything that can keep people from becoming couch potatoes? What do you think is the best strategy to make sure that that doesn't happen to humanity? To make sure people keep fighting, keep staying awake, and keep doing whatever they can to wake up humanity, to make sure the sooner the better we wake up and put a stop to this matrix, then good, we can all be burping butterflies and farting rainbows.
Funny. Well, I mean, it's pretty simple fix, and that's tuning, exposing yourself to the natural rhythms of the earth, of the natural world. So that means connecting with nature a lot, connecting with the weather. It's like people who stay in climate control and never really know what the weather is doing. It's like, connecting with the natural forces, the cycles of the moon and all that stuff. But and when you do that, the confusion wears away very quickly. When you're in the synthetic frequencies, which is, the media, all these different electronic technologies, it's easy to get confused and lost and hopeless, and that couch potato. It's very easy to just lose your energy and not have any motivation. You just kind of want to sit there and veg. And some people do use that as a retreat because of the intensity of life. I understand, but in an overall way, if you want to do your part in saving the world, tune into the natural world, tune into what's around you. Make friends with the life forms that are around you. That's the trees, the birds, the insects, everything. Make friends with them because those are all conscious beings that are here to work with humanity. They all have something special to offer us, even though we may not see it. So the more we tune into our natural rhythms, the easier this kind of transition is. The clarity comes, and it's easier to unplug and not feel like you're consumed or it's hopeless to escape the matrix.
Yes,
Was
very,
that
very good advice there, I say, and you say, and very, very enlightening. So, well, we've got about 8 minutes left. I guess I might as well give you this last bit here to make a sales pitch out of this if you want. The work that you do and the things that you have to offer for people, now's your chance to make a sales pitch out of it and explain how it all works and show that you're not a steak oil salesman. You're definitely the real deal. People definitely can be, you're the real deal at the Cosmic Reset event. So right here, I'm validating you, but I want you to give the opportunity to validate yourself and your work. So go ahead, push your products. And your things. You got 8 minutes to do it if you want.
Oh, well, that's sweet, Andrew. Thank you. I'm not really a pusher. I just speak the truth as I know it, and people recognize that and decide they are drawn to work with me. I work with healers and shaman and energy medicine practitioners of all sorts. So pretty much my mission is to work with the new paradigm visionary leaders and way showers and to help empower them to become more potent in their special abilities and bringing other realities into this one. Uh, and people who are accelerators know exactly what I mean by that. So I have an academy called Academy for Multidimensionals, and that information is on the lightbodyinc.com website. And in there's links to more information of the different programs that we offer, but also at the bottom there's a information on how to work with me privately if you have intuitive blind spots or some experience issues that are causing some problems. And I guess a story I can share is recently I came across a Vietnam vet reached out to me because he was having a difficult time resolving some memories that he had from Vietnam involving insectoids. And what he recalled was that they were giant spiders. They were just like spiders the size of cars, And this was a really confusing and a triggering memory for this person. And we didn't have to do that much. We just worked together a little bit, and we successfully reintegrated those pieces and those levels of consciousness that were giving him problems because of that kind of contact experience from that time frame. Humanity's perceptions were extremely dense, so something like that would have been really traumatic, especially. So I can help with that when you have contact experiences that you can't integrate or having difficulty working through. So I work with all those pieces. And then for starseeds and way showers who like to watch videos and engage in really high level conversations on issues important to people like us, I have a group on Facebook called Rise of the Multidimensional Human. And it's a closed group, so I personally approve each person that comes in. And in that group, we have conversations, other starseeds and other dimensionals have conversations about things that are not really part of the mainstream and most spiritual practices don't acknowledge. So we have a lot of people who are experiencers of, say, like ant people and of Sasquatch, and there's a lot of really cool sharings, let's put it this way, of personal stories that people are having. And when you read another person's personal story that has a close relationship to yours, it oftentimes helps bring clarity or peace to to you. The other thing that happens in that group is that every week, Thursday at noon, I do something called the lunchtime chat, and that is a listener generated topic discussion where I pick three main topics and or questions that have been sent in to me, and I give the liberated perspective as a multidimensional on those pieces. The kinds of things that we talk about is timeline jumping, problems with that. What happens if it's happening? I had one person inquire because they were timeline jumping and didn't know how they were doing it. And then there's like some disclosure information that was released that caused a lot of stress for people, and that was the idea that AI is artificially augmenting history timelines to affect our particular timeline. So I address issues like on those kinds of levels in the lunchtime chats. And it's not just AI and stuff like this. It's also working with spirits and energies and all that. So and exospecies, of course. So that's a really fun way to connect and work with me and expand consciousness and meet other people of like minds, other people who perceive things in your particular unique way, as a visionary or starseed. Let's see. I also facilitate mystical journeys. Every year, I try to make it every year. It doesn't always happen, but because my schedule won't allow it or whatever, I take people to that town I mentioned earlier in the interview, to Crestone, Colorado, and I facilitate experiences. The Sangre de Cristos Mountains is a very special place in the Rocky Mountains. All the peaks there are above 14,000 feet, and that has significant in consciousness. So it creates a hyperdimensional place, and I take people to have contact experiences of the fifth kind. Sometimes I don't usually do it with ETs. I usually do it with inner Earth, interdimensional beings, because I feel like it's really important for humans to make friends with the Earth more than than our star. I don't want to say more than, because our star brothers and sisters are really helpful and wise too. But so there's something that's really special about connecting with inner Earth beings, interdimensional beings for humans that are that especially accelerate their perceptions and expand their consciousness. So I facilitate that every year, and then and actually I leave in a couple of days. I'm taking a group to the Balkans, where we are going to start working with some of that free energy technology that I talked about. We're kind of getting educated by a group of interdimensional beings that they want to meet with my group, and we're going to be taught how to work with that that particular technology. So I do lots of things, but in general it's really about the people who are ready to wake up out of the human experience and step into their mastery as multidimensional beings that are fully autonomous and empowered in this form, and are ready to step into their purpose completely and live that. And it's really my honor to help humans in this way. I get great joy out of watching people become liberated, and healing themselves and healing their consciousness, because it's like it affects everybody they know. It affects the entire family, and it's really, really beautiful work.
And this was a beautiful interview that you had with me in many ways, and I will upload this to YouTube by midnight tomorrow at the absolute latest, and I will post a link to it on Facebook for you when I do, so you can get it out there to anybody you may want to get it out to, and people will be able to hear it and all. So it was a pleasure having you on, and thank you for forgiving me with all my misbehavior at the Cosmic Reset Conference. That was out of my control again. It was, I assure you it was. And
I know it was.
yes, and
I know it was.
yes.
And listen, the reason why I know it was is because I can tell that, in order for you to be there and absorb, you had to check out. The mind part had to check out, so the rest of you can
Oh,
process
really?
what was
Well,
going on.
okay. Maybe I need to ask
That's
you.
how. That's how
Was there like an implant in me or something that caused that? I mean, I've been told that that one of the reasons that happens to me at conferences, often live conferences, is because I am implanted with something that causes me to zonk out, and I can certainly
yeah.
believe that, considering that taking caffeine pills before this lecture does not prevent it from coming on. So if you know what's wrong with me, by all means, let me know. And if anybody else has this problem, what can they do to prevent it?
Yes, I understand. Yeah, I don't mean to tell you like this is what's wrong with you, because I don't think that there's anything wrong with you. That's the thing. It's like that is most of humanity, in my perspective, when I look into humans, they are littered with implants on all kinds of levels. The level of subconscious resistance to certain kinds of frequencies is profound. So, and it's out of your guys' control. So I don't blame anybody who falls asleep. In fact, I have these activations that I do twice a month. Most of the people fall asleep with through that, but do they still get the activation? They do. They still feel changed. So I know that the work is still happening even when the conscious mind is not. I wouldn't fault it just on implants because the scope is much bigger than that. There's much more at play than simply implants that are there either physically or etherically. um, that's like an oversimplification in my perspective when I look at it. But Andrew, if you do want to work on that, I'd be happy to, set just a consult up and look more deeply, and I can probably be able to shift things enough where you can stay awake longer. um, and not have to take all that caffeine, because this actually proves a really good point that if there's more than just physiological stuff affecting our experience, because you should be all hopped up on that caffeine, but our subconscious is so powerful that it doesn't matter. It overrides all that in the physiological level. It does what it wants to do because that's what the subconscious is saying to do it. 90% of our reality is created by our subconscious and not our conscious mind. So I'm a master at going into the conscious mind. So if you want to do that, I'm totally willing to do it. That'd be great.
Well, thank you very much, and I'll get back to you on that, and we'll upload this, and I'll let you know when I do. So, namaste, Christina. Great
Yeah.
talking to you. Enjoy your
Thanks.
Check Out Consciousness. Maybe I'll see you at a future event. Take care.
Yeah.
Pleasure.